Hi, I'm Gordon. In response to Frank's question earlier, I want to read a quote from St. Catherine's Milling and Lumbering Company versus Supreme, 1888. Hope you can hear me. And this one part here. It says, to summarize these arguments, which appear to possess great force, we find that at the date of Confederation, the Indians, by the constant usage and practice of the Crown, were considered to possess a certain proprietary interest in the unsurrendered lands, which they occupied as hunting grounds. That this usage had either ripened into a rule of common law, as applicable to the American colonies, or that such a rule had been derived from the law of nations, and had in this way been imported into the colonial law as applied to the Indian nations, and that such property of the Indians was usufructory only and could not be alienated except by surrender to the Crown as the ultimate owner of the soil, and that these rights of property were inaptly described by the words lands reserved for Indians, whilst they could not, without doing violence to the meaning of language, be comprised in the description of public lands, which the provinces could sell and dispose of at their will. Further, we find that from the conjunction of the word Indians with the expression of lands reserved for the Indians in 24 subsection of Section 91 of the British North America Act, that a construction would place unsurrendered lands into the category of public lands appropriated to the provinces, which provinces would be one which would bring different provisions of the Act into direct conflict, since such lands would be subject to the disposition of the local legislature under subsection 5. And at the same time, it would be within the powers of the Dominion Parliament in the exercise of the general right of legislation regarding the Indians to restrain surrenders or extinguishment of the Indian title to such lands, and thus to render nugatory and the only means open to the provinces of making the lands available for sale and settlement. Then there being two alternative modes of avoiding the conflict, one by treating the British North America Act as by implication abolishing all right and property of the Indians in unsurrendered lands, and thus at one stroke doing away with the traditional policy above noticed, and treating such lands as ordinary crown lands in which the Indian title has been extinguished, and the other by holding that such unsurrendered lands are to be considered as embraced in the descriptions of land reserved for the Indians. It appears to me that the first alternative, which would attribute to the Imperial Parliament the intention of taking away proprietary rights without express words and without any adequate reason, and of doing away with at the most inopportune time with the long-cherished and most successful policy originally inaugurated by the British government for the treatment of the Indian tribes, is totally inadmissible and must be rejected. The inevitable conclusion is that the mode of interpretation secondly presented is the correct one, and that all lands in possession of Indian tribes not surrendered at the date of Confederation are to be deemed lands reserved for the Indians, the ultimate title to which must be in the Crown, not a representing in the province, but the right of dominion. The Indian title having the right of enjoyment and an inalienable possessory title until such title is extinguished by a treaty of surrender, which the Dominion is alone competent to enter into. So when you ask, when did anybody give the right for extinguishment of the Indian title? We find now here, in the opening remarks of St. Catherine's Milling and Lumbering, the court case, it says in here that the lands within the boundary of Ontario in which the claims or rights of occupancy of the Indians were surrendered or became extinguished by the Dominion Treaty of 1873, known as the Northwest Angle Treaty No. 3, form part of the public domain of Ontario and are public lands belonging to Ontario by virtue of the provisions the British North American Act. And then it goes on to mention Section 109. All lands, mines, minerals, and royalties belonging to the several provinces of Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick at the Union, and all sums then due or payable for such lands, mines, minerals, and royalties shall belong to the several provinces of Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, in which the same are situate or arise, subject to any trust existing in respect thereof, and to any other interest in that of the province in the same. So when we look at that, and to any other interest in that of the province in the same, there again, it's written in your documentaries of St. Catherine's that Section 109, for the purpose of this court case and for the purpose of the act itself, shall be known as Indian title. So for us, when we look at that and we say, okay, if the lands are vested in the Crown, there must be a trustee, and the trustee is the province. So where's the beneficiary? In regards to, and to any other interest in that of the province in the same, which is Indian title. Where's the beneficiary? I think that's what Frank wants an answer to by the government, by both the province and the federal government. Let's leave it there for now.